Steam hissed high above the conveyor, white ribbons catching orange light from the exit lamp. I stood by the time clock, pressing my last plastic card through the slit, the number on it blinking red. My backpack weighed on my shoulder, mostly empty except for a battered sketchbook, one old laptop sticky with thumbprints. Around me the morning shift shuffled in, shoulders bunched under cheap jackets, boots scuffing the greasy floor. Most were twice my age. They didn't look at me except for Pete, his eyes bloodshot from a life of swing shifts. He raised one work-thickened hand, a wordless goodbye. "Don't let the door hit you, genius," called out Marco, his voice half laugh, half spit. The others snickered, the sound trailing up to the metal rafters. I kept my face hard. "Last time you get to see me, Marco." That earned a snort. "Right, see you on Twitch with your little cartoons," someone else cackled. They fell away behind the press. I walked the length of the factory, past the hanging banners, efficiency, safety first, past the greasy tables, the chemical storage, the crumpled cans. My ears rang from 8 hours of machine whine. My hands shook, still tender from heat, from the endless, mindless assembly of tubing and metal caps. Outside, dawn clawed up over the city. Behind the loading dock, trash blew softly in the breeze, catching on the chain-link fence. I paused to breathe it all in, the gasoline, the hint of orange blossoms, the low drone of trucks gearing down on Western Avenue. Above it all, Los Angeles, the city that seemed to promise everything but gave up so little. 1 week ago, the supervisor told me not to come back. Downsizing, he'd said, like it was my fault for not working fast enough, for ducking out on overtime. What he didn't say, everyone knew about my crazy project. People talk. I spent break hours scribbling notes about game mechanics, swiping at code on my sticky keyboard, laughed at mostly. "There goes Mr. Video Game," they'd say. I kept moving, boots slapping into yesterday's puddles. The world always looked hungover at this hour, hard luck men rolling carts to liquor stores, taxis spinning off last night's fare. And me retrenched, shamed but strangely light, as though being cast out was its own kind of severance. Home was a shoebox studio, San Pedro Street. One folding table, my bed wedged next to the window, cracked tile, the hum of pipes that never truly slept. I dropped my things and sat in the narrow streaks of light, rubbing my face like I could wipe away the memory of laughter behind me. I turned on my laptop. The screen flickered awake, blue-populated and battered, cursor blinking with judgment. Lines of code everywhere. My project, my game. Project Starborn had become my secret life, the thing that got me through each shift, each insult, each dry and lonely night. I'd started it 2 years back, not exactly knowing what I was doing, hooked by a concept, drawn to the feeling of building a world. A strategy RPG, pixel bright, but grown from my own queer sense of longing and survival. In my head it was dazzling, cosmic armies, outcasts saving themselves, riddles wrapped inside heartbreak. Nobody believed in it, least of all my family. My mother called the day after I lost the factory job, her voice sharp and tired over the static. "You quit again. They let me go." Long pause. "So what will you do now?" "I'm still working on my games." "Games, always games. You're how old? When will you put away these childish things?" People in this house work. The last word hit with an old force, the sound of a belt snapping against a kitchen chair. My little brother chimed in from the background. "He'll be rich, Ma, didn't you hear? He's the next Elon Musk." That made her laugh, brittle and high. It hurt. I hung up after, unable to form a comeback. Alone, I couldn't escape the echo of their mistrust. I climbed under the comforter and tried not to cry. The city's noise carried through the cracked glass, sirens, car alarms, music caught and lost again. 2 days I barely rose from bed. My savings, $384 and change. No prospects, no backup plan. Shame infused everything, my clothes, the ugly little stove, my thinning hair at the temples, but the game was still there, waiting, its half-coded maps, its incomplete soundtrack, its stack of bug reports. Every ugly, beautiful piece of it was mine. I opened the folder and started again, days stretched out indistinct, my phone screen filled with ignored calls from family members, my older sister, her voice always smug when she spoke of her husband's real job in accounting. Old friends, their texts brittle and concerned. I didn't respond, didn't dare to scroll social media, see who was getting married, who'd bought a house. The work became everything. I woke to it and fell asleep with it, propped on one arm, trackpad burning my thigh. I imported assets, I rewrote AI behavior trees, I drew faces that looked almost human. I layered the city's real sounds into the world, the clatter of trains, the hush of street sweepers at 2 a.m. I burned through the hours till my skin prickled and my neck locked. When money ran out, I ate rice, then ramen, then nothing. Just water and stale coffee scavenged from the office where I sometimes dog-sat for a friend. I pawned my studio headphones. I sold my childhood comics well-thumbed and sun-faded. The city remained unsentimental, calling out the names of those who couldn't make it. Rent went up again. My landlord shrugged and told me it was the market. I found myself lingering in libraries for the air conditioning, scavenging Wi-Fi, a free place to sit and code. The guards eyed me but never pushed me out. Job interviews blurred, each employer coolly unimpressed by my gap and project-based digital work. I felt ridiculous alone, a child in an adult's skin. Each minute I didn't leap for some low-wage gig, shame pressed on me, a physical thing braided from hunger, fear, and the old, tight wounds of family disapproval. But I finished the game, piece by ragged piece. The night I exported the first playable demo, I shook so hard I dropped my laptop. I uploaded it, itch.io, then Steam's backlot, a silent hope that someone somewhere would understand. For a month nothing happened. A few downloads, 2 comments, looks cool but buggy. Then one stranger, some streamer in Portugal, found it, played it, and suddenly the view counts shot up. Fan art, mods, critique and adulation, torrents of both. I watched dumbfounded as downloads went from 50 to 5,000 to 50,000. Steam asked about partnership deals, publishers emailed, podcasts wanted interviews. My inbox tumbled with unfamiliar joy. It wasn't an easy launch, nothing ever is. There were haters too, trolls, angry gamers, even cousins on Facebook who wrote, "Can't believe you're still doing this old game stuff," but their voices faded amid the din. For every snide emoji, a dozen messages. This saved me. I never felt seen until now. Money trickled in just enough, then a little more. I forced myself to buy new clothes, clean sneakers, food that tasted of something other than salt and starch. I visited downtown, stood at the tall glass towers watching the city bend beneath the sun. I had survived. Part 2 of living wasn't what I'd expected. Success, I learned, doesn't right the bones broken in your youth. My family still doubted or worse, ignored me. Most of the old factory crew had scattered to new jobs or worse. My own neighborhood looked the same, cracked sidewalks, haze, street artists and dealers and saints in equal number. But I knew myself now. I understood what I'd built, what I'd endured. I started a mailing list, joined panels downtown, talked to young kids in rec centers about building games, not giving up, even when every voice you know tells you it's a joke. 2 years after the launch, the game now mentioned in articles, recommended on Reddit, translated into 4 languages. I was invited back to South Lo's Angels, to the rec center beside the old factory. They were hosting a Creative Careers Day, hopeful for donations. I arrived early. The place hadn't changed much, faded paint, mural of the Virgin Mary stained with grime, pickup hoops under the beating sun. As I crossed the cracked concrete, I saw faces I knew from somewhere deep. The supervisor from the factory, his belly now pressing at his shirt. Marco, older and stooped but unmistakable. Even my mother, summoned by the center's outreach director. They gathered in the musty halls, scrambling for seats, their chatter filling the space with an uncertain edge. I stood behind a folding table, then moved to the ancient projector, switched it on. The bulb fizzed, the slide lit up pale blue, Project Starborn by Javi Ramirez. The room shifted, curiosity mixing with skepticism. "Thank you for having me," I began, feeling the old shame creeping up my throat, the urge to run, to hide my hands. "My name is Javi, I grew up near here. Most of you knew me when I worked over at Angel's Metalworks." Murmurs around the room, the supervisor chuckled. "Didn't much like overtime," he muttered. I smiled, letting the jab hang. "No, I didn't love those 17-hour shifts. You remember. What you might not know is, during all those breaks I was making something else. Turns out, if you believe in your ridiculous dream long enough, it sometimes stops being so ridiculous." My palms sweated. I looked to the first row, my mother's skeptical gaze, Marco's familiar smirk. I felt 17 again, trembling, but I pressed on. "I made a game," I said, voice steady, amplified by the scratchy PA. "A video game. I built it in a one-room apartment, here in Los Angeles, with no money, no help, nobody who thought it would work except me." On screen the trailer rolled, pixel battles, starships launching, tiny characters whose lost faces mirrored my own. Music pulsed, bright and alive, looped from street sounds, sampled from the world just outside these doors. The kids went wild first, clapping, shouting to see their city on the screen, the palm trees pixel-rendered, dialogue snatches in Spanglish. Mothers craned forward. I showed charts, 1 million downloads, translation deals, video interviews with developers from Tokyo, Berlin, Brazil, emails from teachers, therapists, teens who said, "Because your game, I didn't give up." I let it all unfold, no grandstanding, just the truth, plain and sharp as glass. I saw my mother lean forward, her eyes flickering back and forth from me to the figures on the screen. She blinked, as if the numbers couldn't possibly add up to her shy, awkward second son. The old factory supervisor crossed his arms. "Well, I'll be damned," his tone bewildered, grudgingly impressed. Marco looked down, cheeks blooming red, mouth working but unable to form words. The best part wasn't the speech or even the applause that came next. It was when I plugged a controller into the center's cheap flat screen. I handed it to a little kid, Hector, who reminded me of myself. Pocketed jeans, wary eyes, shoes duct taped at the sole. He played. On screen, his avatar, the child of immigrants, half dreamer, half rebel, dove into battle. The game world exploded with color just like I'd dreamed. The room fell silent, then erupted. First the children, then the parents, then shockingly, even the old guard in back. My brother whooped, shouting, "That's my blood!" And for the first time it didn't sound mocking. After people pressed forward, old teachers, old friends, the very men who'd called my dream worthless. They clasped my shoulder, slapped my back, grinned as if this win could be theirs too. My mother hugged me, trembling. She didn't say much, never has, but she squeezed me tight, whispering, "I'm sorry, I didn't see, I didn't know." The look in her eyes was not pride exactly, but something rawer, respect mixed with a bewildered kind of love. Marco approached last, hands jammed in pockets. "Guess those cartoons weren't so stupid after all, huh?" He tried for a joke, failed, nodded with something like humility. "You did it, man." I smiled. "Yeah, I did. We all can, honestly, if we stop listening to the laughers." The world outside the rec center hadn't changed. The factory still loomed, its smokestacks curling into a pale blue sky. The streets still bore their bruises, but I felt different. Lighter. Home didn't mean approval, not always, but it meant roots, proof that what I'd done for myself, and for those like me who'd been laughed out, locked out, mocked for their childish dreams. As dusk fell over Los Angeles, I pocketed the controller, nodded at the faces that raised me, broke me, doubted me. And for the first time, I walked those cracked sidewalks with my head high, game born and real, carrying the truth that I had at last come home.